Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. Introduction. In the hushed town of Clearwater Falls, secrets lingered in the air like the mist that rolled in off the river at dusk. The quaint facade of the community hid a complex web of relationships, fraught with history and buried resentments. What appeared to be a picture-perfect town was, in reality, a stage set for tragedy. Under the soft glow of street lamps, shadows danced against weathered brick, and the distant echo of a train whistle pierced the stillness. On the outskirts, away from the cheerful sounds of children playing and families gathering, lay the dilapidated remnants of an old farmhouse. Time had eroded its charm, leaving behind peeling paint and broken windows. It was here, amid the hideaways of yesteryears, that a dark truth would find its way to the surface. It all began on a cool autumn morning when the local high school students discovered a neglected barn, its doors wide open as if inviting curiosity. It was an unlikely setting for a crime, an ordinary encounter swathed in the scents of decay and damp earth. But as the students ventured deeper, what they found would shatter the serene illusion that Clearwater Falls had maintained for decades. Cell phones lit the way as panic set in, their notifications buzzing like a swarm of bees. Before long, what started as youthful exploration transformed into a grim reality, a reality that would grip the town and force its residents to confront the shadows lurking in their midst. Unbeknownst to them, this would be merely the first chapter in a story that would unravel their lives forever. The victim, as the sun began its slow descent, casting orange hues across Clearwater Falls, the town was left reeling. The name of the victim emerged like a ghost from the shadows. Lauren Fisher, a 17-year-old girl whose vibrant laughter had echoed through the halls of Clearwater High. A competitive swimmer with plans for college, she was known for her kindness and unwavering spirit. Her absence now a heavy weight pressing down on a community that had taken her existence for granted. Lauren had lived a seemingly idyllic life. Nurtured by a loving family and an open-hearted group of friends, her days were filled with the joys of adolescence, spent balancing studies and swim practice. Yet beneath the glimmering surface, she wrestled with the burdens of peer pressure and the quest for acceptance, navigating witty banter in the tide of modern adolescence. As her friends reminisced about nights spent by the river and whispered secrets under the stars, they struggled to understand the darkness that had consumed her. The investigation began to unfold as detectives combed the town for details, poring over Lauren's recent interactions, hunting for clues that could illuminate her final days. Friends and acquaintances were interviewed, their accounts punctuated by the disbelief that someone so bright could meet such a grim end. They spoke in hushed tones, each recalling the last times they saw her, piecing together fragments of a haunting puzzle that now loomed over the town like an ominous cloud. Determined to shine a light on the shadowy corners of Lauren's life, authorities began to peel back the layers. Each revelation revealed another thread connecting her to both friends and foes, hinting that not all bonds were constructed on trust. With curiosity turned to dread, the townsfolk braced for the truths that were yet to emerge, truths that would challenge their understanding of their own world. The crime scene. The day after Lauren's body was discovered, the barn stood eerily silent, wrapped in the embrace of an overcast sky. Police tape fluttered in the gentle breeze, stark against the weathered wood, marking the threshold of a once-forgotten sanctuary. turned grim theater of sorrow. Detectives moved with purpose, their breaths visible in the cool morning air as they meticulously cataloged the scene, aware that every detail could unravel the mystery of what had happened to the young girl. Inside, the aroma of damp hay and decay blended in an unsettling cocktail. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick wooden beams overhead, casting shadows that danced across the dirt floor. The air was heavy, suffused with the weight of unsaid words and lingering regrets. On that floor, wrapped in a threadbare blanket, lay the girl who had once embodied their town's hope. Her lifeless form became a somber reminder of the fragility of youth, a haunting imprint against the rustic backdrop. Detective Ryan Hughes, seasoned yet deeply affected, felt the familiar constriction in his chest as he knelt beside her. He noted the signs: the bruises around her wrist, the smudge of dirt on her cheek, hints of a struggle that spoke more than the girl's silent body ever could. Every detail tugged at the fabric of his compassion, compelling him to piece together her last moments with urgency and respect. He could not help but wonder what thoughts danced through her mind in those final seconds, what fears gripped her heart. As forensic teams collected evidence, the muted sounds of town life continued outside, children's laughter, cars whizzing by, unaware of the storm brewing within the barn's wall. The weight of community grief lay thick upon the investigators, binding them to not only uncover the truth about Lauren, but also to restore a sense of safety that now felt elusive. With every collected clue, the intensity of the investigation ramped up, and a new sense of purpose set in. The narrative around this once peaceful town was shifting rapidly, and there was no turning back. The early investigation. As the sun fought through the clouds on the second day, the town of Clearwater Falls was engulfed in a thick fog of anxiety and uncertainty. The investigation had begun in earnest, driven by an urgency to establish not only the circumstances surrounding Lauren's death, but to restore a sense of peace to a community in distress. Detectives combed through every lead with meticulous precision, their resolve fortified by the magnitude of what was at stake. Detective Ryan Hughes, along with his partner, Detective Ashley Reyes, divided their efforts among Lauren's inner circle. They started with her friends, who bore the heavy mantle of sadness. Each interview took place in the familiar confines of local coffee shops or living rooms, where familiar surroundings clashed with the burden of loss. With every story shared, glimmers of frustration and confusion emerged. Was it truly possible that someone among them had harmed Lauren? A fellow swimmer, Mia Thompson, recounted the last time they practiced together. She seemed distracted, like her mind was elsewhere, Mia recalled, glancing down at her fidgeting hands. But I thought she was just stressed about school. Another friend, Tyler Mitchell, shared a differing perspective, his voice low and shaky. She had been acting weird, withdrawing from us. One night she even told me she was scared about something, but she didn't say what. The detectives exchanged glances, the seeds of inquiry taking root as they noted the inconsistencies in the accounts. As they probed deeper, they learned about a recent party, a gathering in one of the more affluent neighborhoods of Clearwater. The memory felt like a thread woven into a tapestry of secrets, and it beckoned them to pull at it. Who had been there? What was Lauren's state of mind as the night unfolded? Closing their notebooks, the detectives resolved to track down every attendee, suspecting that the night she had attended might hold the answers they desperately sought. The investigation was, accelerating, drawing them ever closer to uncovering the truth sleeping beneath the surface of small-town life. The dead ends. As the days melted into each other, the investigation unfolded like a labyrinth, with detectives navigating twists and turns, but often arriving at dead ends. Each lead brought with it a promise of clarity, yet just as often yielded disappointment. The vitality within Clearwater Falls had drained, replaced by an undercurrent of suspicion as whispers floated through the town, combined with the growing unease that another truth lay buried, just out of reach. Detectives Hughes and Reyes met regularly in the dimly lit back room of the police station, surrounded by charts, plastered with names and connections, a sprawling web that highlighted their struggles. 2 weeks in, they found themselves constantly following breadcrumbs that led nowhere. The attendees of the party had been unhelpful at best, slipping out of conversations like shadows at dusk. Tyler had pointed out a guy named Evan, a mutual friend Lauren once confided in. Arriving at Evan's house, with its white picket fence and inviting facade, only led to a polite but overly rehearsed denial of any knowledge of the events in question. "I've got no idea what happened," he told them, eyes darting, as if each moment grew heavier under the weight of his words. The aura of nonchalance was too practiced for the detective's liking. Days later, they sought out a different lead suggested by Lauren's friends. A boy named Jake, known for his partying reputation but ambivalent feelings toward authority, washed his hands of any involvement. "You guys can't blame me if I wasn't even there that night," he insisted, shrugging off their inquiries. With frustration mounting, Hughes and Reyes felt the encroaching isolation of the investigation. The more they sought the truth, the more the walls seemed to close in, amplifying the strain that was slowly settling over the town. Each passing moment felt heavier as unanswered questions and looming shadows cast doubt on the narratives the detectives were constructing. With the walls pressing in, Hughes leaned back in his chair, fingers brushing against the evidence board that felt increasingly disconnected from reality. Where was Lauren's voice in all of this? Overwhelmed, they knew they had to recalibrate their approach. The town's facade was not just cracking, it was about to shatter. A break in the case, just when the labyrinthine investigation seemed to reach an impasse. An unexpected call rattled the detectives out of their haze. It was the local coroner, her tone steady yet urgent. "We found something in Lauren's autopsy that I think you should know about." Hugh's heart raced as he exchanged determined glances with Reyes, both feeling a sliver of hope pierce through their mounting frustration. Within the sterile walls of the coroner's office, the heavy scent of antiseptic filled the air, a stark contrast to the warmth of the town outside. Dr. Elaine Barrow shuffled through a folder before looking directly at the detectives. "Lauren's toxicology report shows traces of a recreational drug that isn't commonly found in town, something akin to ketamine. This could potentially lead us to who she was with before her death." The detectives mulled over this revelation, realizing that it might explain Lauren's erratic behavior before that fateful night. She could have been in a vulnerable state, Reyes pondered aloud, furrowing her brow. Who was she with, if these drugs were involved? Maybe she was coerced or pressured into something she didn't want. With renewed energy, the detectives delved back into their investigation, reevaluating witness statements with this new angle. They chose to focus on the remaining attendees of the party, particularly those who had been known to dabble in drugs. It wouldn't take long before they stumbled upon whispers of a guy named Luke, a less familiar name, yet one that echoed through the halls of gossip like a persistent specter. Gathering the nerve, Hughes and Reyes approached Luke's home on the outskirts of town, a faint sense of anticipation tinged with trepidation swirling within them. Dull hum of a nearby industrial complex completed the forsaken atmosphere. As they stepped onto the cracked pavement, the gravity of their mission coiled around them like an electric pulse, intensifying the gravity of what lay ahead. The door toed open, revealing a wary young man with unease etched across his face. For the first time, both detectives felt the potential of a breakthrough shimmer like a fragile miragerie they hoped to grasp before it vanished. The suspect. The atmosphere was thick with tension as Hughes and Reyes stepped inside Luke's modest home. The dim glow of a single lamp barely illuminated the cluttered space, filled with remnants of a youthful life marred by reckless choices. The scent of stale smoke lingered. The air felt heavy with secrets. Luke stood before them, shifting uneasily on his feet, wide-eyed but guarded. "Can we ask you a few questions about Lauren?" Hughes initiated, his voice calm but authoritative. Luke swallowed hard, glancing toward the floor, as if searching for an escape route. "I barely knew her," he stammered. But Hughes noticed a flicker of recognition in his eyes, a hint that suggested otherwise. "You were at the party she attended," Reyes interjected, her tone steady. "Your name has come up a few times. We need to know what happened that night." As the questioning deepened, Luke's bravado waned, replaced by a palpable apprehension. He recounted a whirlwind of fragmented events, how he had seen Lauren slip away from the group, her laughter mingled with the pulsing music only, to later realize he hadn't seen her return. His story was riddled with inconsistencies, like a puzzle missing key pieces. "She was fine when I saw her. I swear. I don't know what happened after that," Luke insisted, a hint of desperation coloring his voice. But Hughes and Reyes pressed on. "We know she had drugs in her system. You've got connections to people who could have supplied that." This struck a chord with Luke. He glanced nervously toward the door, measuring his words carefully. "Look, I didn't push anything on her. If she took something, it was her own choice. People do what they want to do, you know." The detectives knew just how fragile his denial was. Luke was stepping into dangerous territory, focused more on his self-preservation than the memory of Lauren. Hughes took a step closer, closing the distance between them. "If you didn't hurt her, then who did? Because you were the last person who had the chance to make a difference." Sweat beaded on Luke's forehead, and for a fleeting moment, a tempest of emotions flared within his gaze: fear, guilt, and a flicker of something darker. It was then that Hughes recognized the turning point. They were no longer merely unearthing facts, but rather navigating the murky waters of human inadequacy. As Luke fell silent, processing the weight of the moment, the detectives knew they were closer to the unsettling truth about that night. The search for justice was only just beginning. The trial. Months passed since the shattering discovery of Lauren's lifeless body, and the small-town heart of Clearwater Falls thudded heavily with anticipation as the trial approached. The once vibrant community had been irrevocably altered, now punctuated by whispers and sidelong glances that followed its residents through the streets. The atmosphere grew sharp with tension, each day unfolding like a page from a chilling novel where everyone had a role to play. Inside the weathered courthouse, a blend of curious townsfolk and anxious family members filled the wooden pews, their faces reflecting a myriad of emotions from eager anticipation to deep sorrow. The gargantuan wooden beams overhead loomed like silent spectators, absorbing the weight of the proceedings. Hughes sat at the prosecution table, sensing the gravity of what was about to unfold. This was more than just a case. It was a chance for redemption for a community that had lost a beloved daughter. Luke stood before the jury, a young man transformed as the implications of his actions were laid bare. Testimonies unfolded, one poignant moment after another, recounting Lauren's final hours and reflecting on the heart-wrenching gaps she left in her family and friends' lives. Witnesses spoke of her laughter, her dreams, and the darkness that had shadowed her in the days leading up to her death. Each story resonated with a powerful honesty that reverberated through the courtroom, filling it with a palpable sorrow. Defense attorneys attempted to weave a narrative of victimhood around Luke, conjuring the perception of him as a mere bystander in a tragic event beyond his control. But the prosecutor stood firm, presenting evidence, drug tests, witness accounts, and an intimate understanding of the impact on a wounded community. As the trial progressed toward its culmination, Hughes took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the entire town pressing upon him. He had not only been fighting for justice for Lauren, but also for the very soul of Clearwater Falls, battling against the silence that had allowed darkness to thrive. In the moments leading to the verdict, an anxiety permeated the arena, an uncertainty that whispered of both hope and despair. Would they receive justice, or would they face the devastating consequences of blindness to one another's suffering? The verdict awaited like the town itself, hovering on the precipice of an uncertain future, longing for resolution yet fearful of the truths it might uncover. The aftermath. When the jury delivered its verdict, the air pierced with a sharp intake of breather, collective exhale, shared among the townspeople, mingled with the rustle of tension. A conviction had been secured, and Luke's fate was now sealed within the walls of the courthouse. Yet in the wake of justice, the echoes of sorrow and unanswered questions lingered like shadows, stretching across the sunlit streets of Clearwater Falls. In the weeks that followed, the town grappled with the emotional fallout. Marks left by grief carved deeper into the fabric of the community. Parents held their children a little tighter. Former friends distanced themselves, and unfamiliar faces emerged, seeking solace from the widening chasm of loss. The simple act of gathering for coffee or sharing a meal became a reflective pause in the pervasive cloud of melancholy. Lauren's family, though eternally marked by their loss, sought to honor her memory. They established a scholarship in her name, a call to action meant to inspire young minds in Clearwater Falls to chase their dreams, just as Lauren had before life's cruel twist. Each application written in her memory was both a tribute to the vibrant girl they had loved and a collective mourning for the possibilities that remained forever unrealized. Meanwhile, throughout the town, graffiti began appearing on walls, ephemeral art imprinted with poignant messages. Not forgotten, and choose kindness adorned vacant spaces, and for a brief moment the messages served as reminders that the community was still alive, aching yet determined to connect. Detectives Hughes and Reyes, forever changed by the experience, continued their work with a newfound perspective, driven by the faces of those who needed protection from the shadows that lurked in the lives of others. Though the trial had concluded, the scars of Lauren's loss served as a quotidian reminder of their duty, As autumn settled back over Clearwater Falls, the leaves turned warm hueous amber, gold, and rust, echoing the bittersweet change of seasons. The town, wounded yet resilient, began to stitch itself back together, confronting the painful truth that each life carries the power to resonate beyond their brief flicker, while the heartbeat of collective hope glimmered against the dark. Reflection. The weeks turned into months, and as winter's chill began to settle over Clearwater Falls, the weight of loss shaped the community's identity in profound ways. Those who had gathered for the trial continued to share their stories and memories of Lauren, as if the act of remembrance could fill the void left in her absence. Candlelight vigils took place, bringing together voices that sang her Namiac note, a testament to the girl who had brought joy to their lives. Detective Ryan Hughes found solace in the routine of his work, yet he carried Lauren's memory with him, a subtle reminder that the cases he encountered were not just files on his desk, but lives intertwined with sorrow, joy, and everything in between. Each report, every lead, and all the faces told stories of struggle and resilience. Ray has often caught him staring out of the precinct window, contemplating the riverbanks where laughter once punctuated the air. The community fortified itself with newfound connections, united by grief, but also a shared resolve to choose awareness, compassion, and support. Neighborhood gatherings were tinged with poignancy as families learned to lean on each other, reinforcing the fabric of trust in their lives. In his quiet moments, Hughes pondered the impacts of violence, how one act could echo perpetually through a town. The scars of Lauren's loss were palpable, yet in them lived hope that through understanding and love, they could create a safer world. As winter took its reign, bringing frosty breath and silver frosts, Clearwater Falls reflected upon its journey, a journey that reminded its residents that from darkness they could find light in their unity, standing together to honor a memory that was forever etched in their hearts.